forza di connetterci al futuro. Ci trasmettono l'energia che nasce dal desiderio. Ma a volte i nostri sogni si connettono con quelli di qualcun altro e insieme conquistano il mondo.
Pronto?
Una cosa così. Il cuore è un po' più
Tridimensionale.
Va bene.
per me è la migliore.
Team, la forza delle connessioni.
Tutti viviamo momenti unici che vogliamo proteggere. Scegli Immagina adesso di Generali, un'unica polizza che evolve con te. Contatta subito i nostri agenti Generali per scoprire la soluzione più adatta a te. Prima della sottoscrizione leggere il set informativo su generali.it. Generali, partner di vita.
La verità è che non ci siamo mai fermati. Proprio quando il tempo sembrava immobile, il pensiero si è mosso in un modo diverso. In quell'istante è cambiato tutto. Abbiamo costruito qualcosa che fosse solido abbastanza da sostenere quella leggerezza. Abbiamo trovato il nostro tempo, chi veloce, chi lento. Un tempo umano, un tempo nuovo.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Good evening everyone. This is the fourth evening of talk organized by Fondazione per la Subsidiarietà. So far we've talked about healthcare, infrastructures, research. Tomorrow we're going to talk about employment, work. But there is a combining element which is digitization. This is today's topic. Innovation to be human. And this is a common thread of two aspects that we're going to deal with tonight. And as usual, we have some important speakers. I will introduce the speakers that are going to help us talk about this topic. Welcome to Arnaud de Puyfontaine, CEO from Vivendi, a major company in the field of communication and majority shareholder of TIM. And then with him, Marco Travaglia, Chairman and CEO of Nestlé, Italiane, Malta. And then Professor Mezzanzanica, Professor of Computer Science and Engineering, University of Milan, Bicocca. Good evening. And then, last but not least, Luigi Ferraris, CEO of Ferrovie dello Stato Italiane. So digitization is a very important bet. 1/4 of the funds coming to Italy, 48 billion euros, will be allocated to digitizations. And these are the funds of the National Recovery Plan. And these investments are necessary for a country like Italy, which is still lagging behind. Right now, we are at the 18th position in Europe in terms of innovation and digitization. And we can see that together with our graphics, which can help us understand the situation of Italy. Now, despite it is the third European country in terms of economy, the level of digitization is 18th country out of 27. But there's another data which is even more important and will help us understand tonight's debate. And that is the level of digitization of Italian companies. Italian companies are somewhat lagging behind on digitization, and we can see that from the second slide. The mature Italian companies only account for 3.8%. 1/3 of Italian companies have a positive approach. They are experimenting, they are testing digitization, and they have improved over the past 2 years especially, and 1/3 of Italian companies are still lagging behind. And this is the first question for Professor Mezzanzanica, so that we can get into the topic. Let us understand whether the gap can still be bridged, and in what terms and how compared to Europe. Well, actually, we're lagging behind because we miss the skills, and also because it is difficult to measure how much investments in digitization bring value to companies. These data that you have just shown show that it's the major companies that are at the forefront, especially on artificial intelligence and big data, whereas SMEs have started their journey, in particular on infrastructures, but they have more difficulties in terms of technologies. And this is a topic that we have to deal with, and the National Recovery Plan can help us a lot. It seems that for the past few years, we have understood that digitization is of the utmost importance. Can you tell us why it is strategic to invest on digitization? Well, basically there are two factors characterizing digitization. The first one is the ability to make corporate process effective, so efficiency and effectiveness of corporate processes. Second, the idea to generate information, knowledge, which becomes a fundamental tool today to improve the ability to make decisions, to support decision-making, which have to be to the point and must meet the needs. Efficiency can bring companies to be more competitive, reduce costs, improve the ability of meeting needs. Effectiveness means creating solutions that can meet different types of needs, which are different by age bracket, for example. And this is fundamental in growing. This is why it is fundamental to grow digitization. So it is strategic for efficiency and knowledge. Yes. So this is a fundamental and strategic choice for our country. But where are we? And we've asked that to Minister Colao some days ago, the interview by Simona Gallo. Minister, where are we after 18 months? Well, the past 18 months have been very intense. And I have to say that the situation is quite positive. At the beginning, somebody said, you'll never make it. You'll never manage to do it in 2 years, what you have promised. But looking back, we have allocated all the resources for the national digitization. We're now signing the contracts So we have signed the contracts and we are in the operational phase. We have received an extraordinary reaction from municipalities to digitize the services. 92% of schools and municipalities are on board with us. We have designed innovative programs on skills, and this is a very important topic because Italy is still lagging behind on digital skills. We started with something that we believed it impossible to do on healthcare, digital healthcare. People were saying that regions would never cooperate with us, but this is not the case because regions are even helping us to write projects. And also, there's the question of space. We have relaunched Italy in space with investments. Unfortunately, we will have to give up to others, but yes. There has been a lot of acceleration of Italian economy. We have recovered 2 positions in Italy, but we still rank 18th. Where do we need to recover the most? We have made a lot of programs on companies. Italian companies now are modernizing. We have made good progress, but now we will need to accelerate with the National Recovery Plan. We will have to improve in 2 areas. One, for which we have already laid the basis, is in the digitization of the public administration. Public services are relatively little modern, I would say, and therefore we need to act. We have designed the platforms. We are completing the last ones. And the next government will have to act to implement services in citizens' daily life. And then there's the challenge of skills. We're lagging behind the skills. We have very few STEM skills. Some population is not familiar with digitization, and that will take more time, but I think this is the most important thing. So skills and public administration, I would say, are the future challenge to go from the 18th place to number 8, 7, or whatever. Almost 50 billion euro from the National Recovery Plan are allocated to digital transition. Where are we? I think that the work done by all colleagues and by all of us has been a good one. A good one for the companies. The incentives of the Ministry for Economic Development have been very important for Italian production, which is now modernizing. I believe that a good performance, which is almost unexpected of Italian economy, is due to the fact that our companies have not wasted time, as in they have used the pandemic to modernize, to open up. And now we need to keep up with the pace. But we need to thank Italian SMEs because they've done well. I think that the most important thing is to remember that at the beginning it's easier, and then it's more difficult. But we have to make sure that public administrations and those who do not want to change, or maybe some companies are afraid of changing. So we need to accompany them. We need to help them. Hence, we also need to allocate resources to training and retraining of people. So there's a fundamental strategic point for the national digitization, the network. If there's no efficient network, data cannot travel. So Arnaud de Puyfontaine, bonsoir messieurs, hello. You've been a chairman of Telecom for many years. You know the Italian context very well. Today with Vivendi, you are the majority shareholder of TIM. In Italy, there has been a long debate on creating a single network in Italy. My question is, why, in your opinion, is this a strategic choice to have a single network?
Well, thank you for your invitation, and that's a great pleasure for me to be with you this evening. And just as a matter of precision, I've been the representative of Vivendi as the prime shareholder of Telecom Italia during a few years, because we started in 2015. And I have had the great honor to be the chairman of the company during only 1 year. But since the very beginning of that journey, which is a long journey, I had always a conviction, which is that this infrastructure in telecommunication is a must-have to be able to accelerate the digitalization of the country. You have produced some numbers in terms of position of Italy in its competitive European competitive landscape. I think that it has to be said that there has not been a cable history in Italy. And it puts Telecom Italia in a position to be in the leading position as regard to create the skeleton of the telco infrastructure to accelerate the speed of fast ultra banda larga, as I think we say in Italian. And for that, and the vision, which is the Vivendi vision, which has from the very beginning said that we were there as a long-term industrial investor, because we are first and foremost a media, content and entertainment group with a worldwide reach. The reason why we started this journey in Italy with a long-term vision is, number one, because we do think that Italy in Francia, in France and Italy in our field is a winning combination, and there are so many things to be written together on the one hand. But for us in our business, being able to get the right infrastructure of distribution of our product, of our content, be it in music, in film, in movies, in education and so on and so forth, we need to get a proper infrastructure, and with a leading player. Telecom Italia is a great company. Telecom Italia has its own challenge, we know that, but again, I'm reiterating the point that it is of the essence to get the right environment. Rete Unica is part of this environment, and with the right move at last, because it would have taken many years, but I think that we are in a kind of a position where there can be a turning point. And as regard to our position, as I said it, on a regular basis, we want to be a very proactive player to make that happen, and to be very constructive and positive in terms of creating this Rete Unica to the benefit of all Italian citizens, to the country, all the business in Italy, and we are working hard to make that happen.
Grazie. Thank you. Now, talking about digital networks and wideband, broadband, Luigi Ferraris. Infrastructures are also central for you. And it is also important to talk about applied digitization. In the past days, we talked about physical infrastructures. What does it mean for you? What does innovation and digitization mean for you? Good evening to you all. Thank you for inviting me here. We, as you may know, have launched a 10-year plan with investments of about 190 billion focused on physical infrastructures, development of logistics, and development of passengers transport. And the key factors are innovation, digitization, and clearly people. Why is digitization important? Because our group, Ferrovie dello Stato, has had a different system over the years and different digital environments, which oftentimes do not speak with one another. So the first objective is to create common platforms so that all the different platforms and all the different areas, as in stations, train transport, can communicate. Connectivity is also another key element, as we have heard. Why? Because we carry passengers and people traveling on our train, on our buses, and it is clear that we need to make sure that these people are connected. So they must be connected among themselves and with the external world. So we have made an infrastructure which has been built by Ferrovie. We have an internal network of communication. We have optical fibers on our rails. We have analyzed the situation, and we have launched a two-phase plan. There is an initial plan which is already underway, whereby we will improve the service on faster trains with 4G over 14 months. So we have made an upgrade between Milan and Bologna, and we will do the same upgrade from Bologna to Firenze, and over the next 18 months we will have the 4G down to Rome. Then we have 17,000 kilometers of railways, including fast trains, reaching 2,200 municipalities and train stations, and covering also rural areas, which are sometimes not covered by telecommunication signals. So we have thought about strengthening the connectivity and transport by installing optical fibers, which could be used to use the Wi-Fi on all trains, all types of trains, so that connectivity can even reach the train station in the different cities and towns. There are municipalities in Italy where there are no network operators which can connect in order to develop connectivity. Let's think about the benefits that this type of infrastructure might have, for example, for farmers. Farmers can get connected to, for example, I don't know, plain irrigation. And also this is going to be an upgrade for passengers. And also, this is a data container that can be carried to the different areas where data can be grouped, and we can develop algorithms that can be used in order to better manage information, in order to maintain infrastructure in the future. So this is going to be what you're going to do. In addition, as for the investments, we're talking about 2 billion euros of investments on 17,000 kilometers. Traveling on train is still somewhat complicated. This is going to be the future prospect. But as I said before, we also have some areas of improvement that we need to work on. But let's consider that our road and railway infrastructures are 70 or even more, 70 years old, or they're even older. They were designed in order to manage a certain volume of traffic, which is different from today's. So we need to increase the capacity of transport. And the transport plan wants to increase by 20% the possibility to transport people on rail. And also the combination between road transport and rail transport is important. The digital side is important because we have the possibility to have one single ticket in order to use a train and bus. This is intermobility, and this applies to both passengers and goods. Yes, and we talked about it during the last days. Now, let's go to the second part. This is still the interview by Minister Colao, because we already know that we have to come to grasp with inflation, and inflation needs an answer, and maybe digitization could be an answer for companies in order to reduce costs. How can digitization change the relation between the state and the citizens? We are working, and in issue we are going to release a new platform so that citizens will automatically have access to benefits like different types of benefits or aid or medicine, because these users will be automatically recognized by the system. So this digitization enables you to be recognized automatically and to know your needs automatically. And this is at the basis of the trust between state and citizens. Pandemic, skyrocketing inflation, war in Ukraine. It's not going to be an easy winter. How can digitization relaunch the country, and what impact can it have on skills and companies? Digitization is essential. For years we've said, no, it's terrible, because if we digitalize everything, there's going to be deflation. Neither there's inflation. And fortunately, digitization digitization can offset. So it's a major opportunity to reduce costs, to increase productivity. Since the prices of commodities are increasing as well as energy prices are increasing, we can have a better system thanks to digitization. So digitization is a part and parcel of the answer we need to provide to the new inflation context we're living. Marco Travaglia. You are leading the Italian group of Nestlé, the multinational, which has a different type of food products. The minister thinks that digitization can contribute to decrease inflation. Good evening. Thanks to you for inviting me here. Yes, the digitization can be very positive, very good in order to improve efficiency. But before answering your question, I want to go back to the topic, innovate to be human. The real challenge of digitization is to put the person, man, at the center, so the citizen at the center. So this is the way we can get the best benefits of digital transformation. And we can do so when we can make something for citizens, for users, which can be 10 times quicker, 10 times more efficient, 10 times cheaper. So when we manage to rethink the business models by exploiting the digital. Digital must not be designed for its own sake, but must be designed with man and user, the person, at its base, at its center. And this is the way we are looking at things and at the opportunities provided by digitization. And then internal efficiency is also very important. So next autumn is going to be very complicated due to different costs. I'll give you some examples. If carrying a container to the other side of the ocean was costing $1,000 2 years ago, now it's going to cost $10,000. We handle a lot of traffic to the United States, and we needed to connect the different systems with the artificial intelligence so that in real time they share information from production to logistics to shipping, so that we can optimize costs. And I could give you different examples on that. Now, they are systems which are accessible, and they can also be quite cheap. Also, waste reduction is important. We are using artificial intelligence for our production. Our production now is digital, also in terms of food safety. So, the digital can enable us to optimize the production, to minimize waste, and to ensure food safety. How can digitization contribute to different aspects, like structural aspects, for example, safety at work? We have developed internal skills. Quite recently, we have developed an app whereby we can monitor our people and which can tell us what are the potential dangers in terms of safety at work in all the companies or in the Nespresso boutiques that we have. So anybody can say, here we can have this danger, we can have this risk. And so in real time, we have a map of the level of risk of safety at work throughout our companies, 70 shops, and so on and so forth. So applications can be infinite. There are many of them, and we need to work on that, and we need to allocate resources on that. So then we're going to talk about that with Professor Mezzanzanica, who knows the processes. But before that, talking about companies, we're going to show you a short video on industry. How can innovation change the way of collecting food, like tomatoes, for example?
Instafactory è un progetto.
Instafactory, it's a very innovative project. It means changing, once again, the paradigm. So tomato is not brought to the factory, but the other way around. So we can collect, pick, and transform in the field the tomatoes where they were grown. So transformation and processing takes place exactly in the field with no transport costs that somehow are a stressful process for tomatoes. The benefits are several. We can enhance the value of this wonderful raw material. Tomato is a real symbol of made in Italy. Sometimes it is neglected, and sometimes it is considered as not such a great value product. Instead, we want to provide even better final products. We are also working on research, and we want to constantly improve also when it comes to ecological policies, because we somehow get rid of any raw material transport, and so we improve costs, and the ecological benefits are major. The product remains unique. It's a single variety tomato that is farmed by really top farmers. They can accomplish impossible missions with a high level of attention for details. And time reduction is another key factor to better preserve the taste and main features of this product. Unlike industrial investments, the return on the investment is not immediate. It's a long-term investment, and often in such cases, there are climate effects that are to be seen in the long run. But again, I think that we need to respect more farming activities. We need a mindset change, in more general terms, to change the paradigm and moving from being land exploiters to land regenerators. For those of you who followed our talk yesterday, we talked about the academic world getting into factories, and factories somehow working even in the field, as we have seen. Professor Mezzanzanica, what about this kind of partnership? Certainly, a lot of research work lies behind such a project. So is that the way forward, the way to take, also in order to foresee the further steps of the university-industry partnership? Are there still gaps to be filled? Should further efforts be deployed, and of which kind? Well, first of all, I want to say that university is no more ivory tower, and there are strict connections with the job market and the industrial sectors, because now university aims at developing research, training, and also bringing the results of such activities into businesses. So major steps are being made. There are many partnerships underway on these three main axes, and important results are being obtained. Research work is also carried out in partnership with the companies, and that upgrades training activities for our young people, and so this is beneficial. Secondly, companies and businesses are sending their best employees back to university to upgrade their skills and knowledge. And again, this is a win-win situation, because development is co-designed when it comes to research activities and training activities. On top of that, there is another key issue that needs to be considered and overcome. Sometimes SMEs have problems in creating such partnerships, and this may be an obstacle for smaller companies. Secondly, investments in this respect needs to be made on the medium and long term, so you can't have short-term results, because research by nature requires certain times to be fully developed and to fulfill all its goals, and to fulfill all its potential. So again, in this sense, we need to better develop corporate philosophy going in this direction. And over the next 4 or 5 years, new jobs will see the day. So, Professor, probably many of these new jobs will come from these positive partnerships. Well, I can say something relevant. So 10 years ago, we rolled out a new master on big data analytics and artificial intelligence. We have trained more than 400 people, and that started very easily. We had a real passion for these subjects because they are at the heart of our research. But at the same time, we found companies that were willing to invest. And in 2010, 2011, during the first huge economic crisis, we started this master when nobody wanted to invest. So to be done, in order to do this, so we need the resources. And I go to you, Mr. de Puyfontaine. So we have a lot of SMEs in Italy, small and medium enterprises. We do not have huge groups or big companies. Instead, in France, you have a higher level of concentration. So do you have an advantage because of this, Mr. de Puyfontaine, in terms of competitiveness and digitization? So maybe you're stronger.
I think that in the relationship between big groups and entrepreneurs, you have to find the right speed. Because you're talking about supposed competitive advantage in France. But you know, in France, you've got this relationship between big groups and small entrepreneurs. And there was always culturally a kind of confidence gap between the so-called small operators and the big one. I do believe on the opposite, that in Italy, since now 6 years, the number of amazing entrepreneurs I have met in SMEs or middle-sized company is absolutely amazing. And I do remember 3 years ago, just before the pandemic, I went in Puglia for a couple of days during an event called Digiton, who was about funding digital entrepreneurs, etc. The level of creativity, the can-do culture of Italian entrepreneur is amazing. So to answer your question, I think that the magic formula is to try to find the right balance between the relationship between big groups with international reach, with the economic resources to invest in young entrepreneurs or small companies to be able and to enable them to grow them. It's like in the Navy. You know, you've got the big ships, but the big ships without the capacity to be surrounded by small, agile, dynamic type of boats are not working. I think it's the same thing in our industry, and there are differences in the structure of the market, but I guess that Italy, from what I have seen, and there is a responsibility when you're in big group, which is to invest in the ecosystem, as fantastic assets to be developed. And if I can share with you the situation as regard to Telecom Italia, there has been many initiatives to support different companies. There is a fantastic research operation from Telecom Italia in Torino, who has invented a lot of things. And the capacity to play on this kind of winning formula between entrepreneurs and big groups is for me the kind of, sacré graal, as we say in French.
Dottor Ferraris,
Mr. Ferraris, you have to leave us in 5 minutes, so I'll give you the floor straight away to have your feedback. So I've been a commuter for 40 years on local trains first and then on high-speed trains. And I must say that I've seen the level of transformation of your company. Now everything can be bought with no queues through a smartphone. And it is very important to have a smartphone also to enter and access the meeting, to visit this initiative. So I have a question about what you said beforehand. So trains are managed and controlled by an algorithm. So What about the human factor? Can be safely travel? Well, no. It's not totally true. I mean, the human factor, it's still important. Let's say that technology and the digitization are allowing a more and more automated train management thanks to digitization. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean that there are safety distances between one train and the next one that needs to be kept. So in case of changes in these safety distance, there is a sort of chain reaction block of all the rolling stock. So let's take the staff working on trains. So if there were technical problems, so I mean, men are always there, and the other way around. If the human operator had problems, an automated system could be somehow launched. So you need to have also a very good alert system in order to intervene just in case. We have seen what happened on some planes. For instance, if a pilot had an health issue or fell asleep. So, men needs always to be able to be in charge. And digitization is certainly growing, but still, human operators are still very important and make final decisions. And technology is a huge support because it can trigger an alert system in a risky situation in case a human had not seen a risk and a threat. So machines can intervene. So technology needs to be a mean and not a goal. Otherwise, you risk to become a slave of technology and to depend too much on it. Well, when it comes to digitization and the digitization activities we are carrying out with other companies, so the new algorithms and tools let us carry out activities that in the past were made through more complex, complicated, and manual processes. So certainly, in some respects, we need to properly manage this transition. Technology needs to be a tool to support new jobs. How? Through training. We have 80,000 employees. The average rate is 43 years. And we want to recruit another 40,000 people with a lower average age. But we can't leave anybody behind. Everybody needs to remain on board. So we need to change our way of working. We also need to work on communication. You have been a commuter for 40 years. I've also been a commuter in other respects, but I know that kind of life. Well, as a CEO, you sort of travel in a comfortable way. Well, I was a commuter as well a long time ago. And I like to observe travelers and say, oh, you travel incognito. We need to have integrated platforms in order to improve the level of service for passengers. So passengers' life needs to be simplified, and technology and digitization will let us do so, improve the level of comfort, improve the monitoring of infrastructure. Let's think about climate change. If we had today the infrastructure I told you about already today with key focal points in order to guarantee better monitoring on the network, well, that would be great. So there's a huge potential, but that needs to go hand in hand with a great effort of inner training, and nobody has to be left behind, because otherwise you are not ethical also as a company. And also we need to reduce the level of inefficiencies. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, being able to buy tickets through the smartphone is extremely convenient. I do agree. And then there is another place where huge transformations have occurred, banks, because we can do a lot of banking activities through digital tools. And you have somehow followed the privatization of our Post company. I know that you have to leave us, so thank you very much still for joining us. Thank you, and see you next time. Thank you. So let's talk about banks and digitization with a little reportage. Italy gave me a lot since I was a kid. I've never given anything to Italy. So when I had the chance to do something for Italy during the pandemic, so when Italy needed people, I was there. And I've been a teacher. And when you are a teacher, you have a huge impact on students. I have also been an entrepreneur, and also as an entrepreneur, you can have an impact on your staff. But, well, if you change the social security in Italy, you can have such a huge impact. Well, the social security institution in Italy has always been considered as a sort of very complex structure. Well, our social security institution is changing. Many young people have been recruited recently, and it opened up to the private sector because other executives come today from the private sector. So everything took place over the last 18 months. We launched new services, and we started from the bottom. And again, I work in a team, and we work with several branches. We saw the local problems. There was a problem of redundancy, and many people had been made redundant. And it was so painful to see all those people who had been made redundant. It was horrible because each number, is a family, is a person. And so you come across people who have a deep sense of failure. So we set up a portal in order to help people submit their subsidy requests for redundancy. So we used agile methodologies that in the past were not available in the Social Security institution. And also we have introduced artificial intelligence. We have developed some projects over the last 12 months to somehow classify in an automatic way the legal mail. And so now legal email addresses have been classified. This project have been awarded a prize by UNESCO as one of the best projects using artificial intelligence, in particular in relation to the UN SDGs. So now we have really somehow embarked on a huge transformation process. Where which skills do people need? Well, it's not true that there's the brain drain, not at all. The important thing is to be willing to do something good for your country. We are looking for people who are strongly motivated. This is the first and most important requirement. On top of that, unfortunately, the IT recruitment process are a bit slow. There are still somehow too slow procedures. I hope that maybe in the future, a new software company that is being set up right now will be able to speed up the recruitment processes. Okay, we made a little mistake. So that was the third reportage that we wanted to show you, because we wanted to talk about public administration after talking about banks. So we wanted to talk about our Social Security Institute, INPS, that has recruited Vincenzo Di Nicola, a young 43-years-old executive. He started working in the Bitcoin sector, and 2 years ago was recruited by INPS, our Social Security Institute, to transform it digitally. And I think that many of you have already acknowledged how this Social Security Institute has changed. So I go back to Mr. Travaglia. So we have seen that the world is changing. So I would like to ask you something also as a consumer, not just as a host here tonight. So is digitization of help to better profile consumers about their taste and behaviors? Well, certainly, consumer profiling is a huge topic. Well, I could make some examples that come from everyday practice. Okay, so we, first of all, may consider some areas in some sectors. I think about Nespresso. Nespresso is part of our company, and Nespresso is strongly digitized as a direct relationship to our consumers. Thanks to this, and thanks to data collection about consumer preferences and taste, we have been able to develop new recipes, new interaction ways with consumers, and so now consumers are better served. So we've talked about train tickets, we've talked about social security systems, and sometimes we perceive the benefits of the digitization when our life gets easier. And certainly, when you work in the consumption sector, it is easier to have a direct relationship to consumers. Let's think about pet food. Pet food is traditionally sold through, retail shops or retailers. And so you have an even further step, because you cannot digitize the relationship to cats and dogs. You always have the middleman of their owners, but this is another issue. So how can we communicate in the best way? And in this case, digitization is a big help to improve communication. Let's imagine that I own a cat or a dog. So 70% of TV commercials are not very effective. So digital solutions help us better reach out to pet owners. And so we work a lot on customer data collection, and so customer management tools, we can improve our relation to customers, but without being too pushy or invasive, because when you get promotion and publicity that you did not ask for, you can feel bothered, but it's not so bad to get info about things you are interested in. And so in large retail sector activities, digitization opens up big opportunities. And then e-commerce is another important topic. Thanks to e-commerce, now we can certainly better serve consumers, and again, we can acquire further data, because again, in order to improve customer services, it's all about data collection. Data collection is really key. And I want to ask Mr. de Puyfontaine, profiling is important in order to improve communication with users and consumers. We know almost everything about consumers, so about us. Are there limits to be set in this respect?
Shadow of a doubt, my answer to your question is yes, there are some limits. Because in every new environment, as the digitalization is creating for the individual or for the homo, I think that we need, as individual, to be in the driving seat. So there are huge benefits as regard to this digitalization, and you know, in terms of access to the information, access to the service, the capacity really to be benefiting from this digitalization environment is a massive opportunity, and we didn't talk about the next Web 3.0, which is going to be about the metaverse, etc. 2 months ago at Vivendi, we bought some 1,000 square meters in Sandbox, which is one of the metaverse platform within which we'll be able to engage with our audience and creating a digital show for the purpose of developing our businesses in this new world. But coming back to the question, we need to set strict rules. We need, as human beings, to be in the driving seat. And for that, this is the transparency of the relationship we're having with the big GAFA. This is the capacity to get transparency in the rule of the game. And we have to be, as individuals, as human beings, in control of the data that we are happy to share with our global environment. So that's the reason why every initiative, and those which we have seen in Brussels, for instance, on which both Italy and France have been heavily involved in the negotiation of the relationship with the Google, Facebook, Twitter, and others, it's of the utmost importance to be able to set clear rules and to put at the end of the day the human at the center of what we are ready to share, how we are ready to be involved in this relationship with the digital world, and that's part of the kind of a new regulation that has to be put in place. But at the end of the day, I think that robots needs more mankind than the opposite. And again, this image of being in the driving seat is totally of the utmost importance for the future.
Parliamo allora di umanità e...
Okay, let's talk about mankind and banking world. Now, we're going to show you the next video that we wanted to show you beforehand. So, mortgages and all banking services with a click. This is not just a slogan, it's a fact. With a smartphone, you can do it. The pandemic has only accelerated the process of digitization of the banking system. The latest data of the Bank of Italy talk about a decrease of 10,000 branches throughout Italy. Everything seems to be virtual, but savings of a lifetime need to be protected. This is a must for the banking system. Hence, the topic of safety is fundamental, and the use of artificial intelligence is a very important asset. In the past few years, we have seen that artificial intelligence algorithms are very precious, because with them we can prevent much better the frauds. AI algorithms work on our customers' behaviors. The behavior is understood, and therefore strange behaviors are identified. With an increasing complex processes, innovation is very important if you want to handle enormous quantities of data of customers and provide them with services. For example, today, we have the robot advisors, and they are increasing. Using different algorithms, they can diversify investments to offer to customers based on their profiles. A profile which is not made by the bank director, but by the algorithm itself. Hence, a question comes natural. Will digitization bring to the loss of human relation in banks? No, quite the opposite. These algorithms are helping us to understand even better the needs of our customers, and so we can meet their needs in a much more effective way. So they are at the service of our customers. Branches must continue to exist for different needs, but oftentimes going to the bank is a waste of time for customers, because in a digital way, customers can meet their needs in a faster and more effective way. But branches and going to the bank will always be necessary when interaction between man and bank is needed. So the aim of digitization is not to replace the relation with the customers, so that on the one hand there can be the advantages of the physical relation, ability to listen, interpersonal relations. On the other end, there can be the benefits coming from digital services, like being fast and being able to provide services everywhere. These lead to the new skills required to people who want to work in a bank today. There's going to be a more digital future, and therefore STEM skills, so scientific topics, right now are fundamental. Our technicians are working together with sociologists, philosophers, and lawyers, because we believe that a human approach targeting customers is still very effective. I have a very fast question to Arnaud de Puyfontaine and to Marco Travaglia. In companies like yours, 4.0 companies, what type of skills are necessary for a younger person who wants to work? Travaglia. Well, as we heard before in the video, these young people must be curious, must be hungry, must be brave, must have courage. And we that are leading the company must understand the needs of the young generations. We have basically 3 generations that are now working. We, boomers, which are leading the company, and then the Y and the Z generation, the millennials and the Z generations, and they will be the ones that will bring about change. Therefore, as managers, we need to create a culture to create the best possible conditions for these new generations to work inside companies. No one has to lag behind, because they still need our experience, but we need their courage and their ability to innovate, because they do have it as young people, and this is necessary to do digital innovation. De Puyfontaine.
Say exactly the same thing. But just to add, I think that agility and creativity is of the utmost importance. In every companies, there are 3 key elements, which is transformation, because we are in the world of transformation. Number 2 is innovation, because we need to innovate. And the creativity, because we need to get disruptive ideas to be able to cope with all the changes. And if I may give you just an example, in the music industry, which during 15 years, with all the CDs decreasing, etc., this is an industry which had lost 85% of its earnings in more or less 15 years period. Over a period of 5 years, and through one of our business called Universal Music Group, Giovanotti in Italia, for instance, we have taken the leadership of the reinvention through streaming, OTT, and now this is a growing industry which has reinvented itself thanks to digitalization, thanks to innovation, and thanks with the new capacity of distribution. And when you see the profile of the people who have led this transformation, those were profiles which were exactly spot on the profile that has just been described. Last but not least, I'm very lucky because being a boomer like yourself, I have a fantastic advisory board, which are my 4 children at home, aged from 31 years old to 23, and I can tell you that they are my best advisor to explain me all the wrong things that I've done, and the need for me to be able to reinvent an environment which is going to sort all the things that we should have done and we didn't do in the past. So thank you to my children, if you allow me to say that on that stage.
Professor Mezzanzanica, lei...
Professor Mezzanzanica, now you know the world of companies, but as a professor you have to deal with the students every day. What can you say to the world, to the students today who want to start working today? We've seen today that digitization can not only be tackled from a technical perspective. We need different skills. We need the ability to work in team. In companies, we are looking for people that know the different domains of the company, the different applications. They must also have softer skills, as in the ability to work with others. Because today, people who work in the digital world is not just a technician. They must bring a value. So we need to overcome difficulties that are typical of the digital world. Sometimes there are strict applications, hard applications that cannot be changed, and they make our life difficult. On the other hand, there are applications which are much more flexible, that are most suitable and in line with our needs. I'll give you an example. We could choose to use an application asking us to stay there for a few minutes in order to do something, because the IT, the digital world, is very strict, or else we can get a navigator, we can use a navigator, and over the time, as soon as something happens, tells us to change our way, because this is what we have to do. So the digital can be either strict or flexible. And here, we must be able to innovate continuously, and the young people must be trained on that, must be trained on flexibility and creativity. They must not just be technicians. Thank you, Professor Mezzanzanica. Thank you, Mr. Travaglia. Thank you, Monsieur de Puyfontaine. But I didn't understand something. You are in favor of the single network, but are you also in favor of a public single network?
I think the question is not who should be owning, and we need to get every option available. I don't have any further information at this stage. The important thing is not who owns it, it's what is the purpose and how such a plan will enable to accelerate the digital take-up, the banda ultra larga, to the benefit of Italy and Italian SMEs and Italian people. That's the most important thing. And as a shareholder of this company, my behavior and what I will do is to facilitate and under the right condition to make that happen if I am allowed to do so, which I dearly hope. And what I do on a daily basis on that subject is really to create the right condition with the regulatory environment, with the shareholders and where the different people involved at the political level and so on and so forth to make that happen. So that's the answer to your question.
Thank you. Thank you to those of you who have followed us here in the room and online. We'll see you tomorrow for the 5th day. We're going to deal with work, employment, and inclusion. And we're going to have with us Mr. Bonetti. Good evening to you all. See you tomorrow.
civiltà dell'amore. Fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
I sogni hanno la forza di connetterci al futuro. Ci trasmettono l'energia che nasce dal desiderio. Ma a volte i nostri sogni si connettono con quelli di qualcun altro e insieme conquistano il mondo.
Pronto?
Una cosa così. Il cuore è un po' più...
Tridimensionale.
Va bene.
Per me è la migliore.
Team, la forza delle connessioni.
Tutti viviamo momenti unici che vogliamo proteggere. Scegli Immagina adesso di Generali, un'unica polizza che evolve con te. Contatta subito i nostri agenti generali per scoprire la soluzione più adatta a te. Prima della sottoscrizione leggere il set informativo su generali.it. Generali, partner di vita.
La verità è che non ci siamo mai fermati. Proprio quando il tempo sembrava immobile, il pensiero si è mosso in un modo diverso. In quell'istante è cambiato tutto. Abbiamo costruito qualcosa che fosse solido abbastanza da sostenere quella leggerezza. Abbiamo trovato il nostro tempo, chi veloce, chi lento. Un tempo umano, un tempo nuovo.